Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Okay, so when you hear the word poetry, what pops into your head? Are you picturing, just long, dusty blocks of text? Well, today we are going to use this curriculum to completely flip that script. We're going to look at poems as visual blueprints, just waiting to be decoded. In this setup, you are the director, and the poem is your stage.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap. We're going to start by seeing the visual voice, move into enjambment, which is the dramatic pause, then check out concrete poetry, see what happens when we spotlight a single word, practice those visual skills, and finally, wrap up with education, morality, and peace. Let's get to it.
Section 1. Seeing the visual voice. This is really the blueprint of poetry.
To kick things off, the source material actually introduces a scripture from Habakkuk 2:2. It says, "Write the vision, make it plain on tablets, so he may run who reads it." The curriculum uses this to set up a really profound premise. Making your vision visually clear is absolutely crucial for getting your message across. Basically, if the vision isn't laid out clearly, whether on an ancient tablet or a modern page, the reader just can't take it and run with it. So in poetry, how the words actually look is just as important as what they say.
And that brings us to a core concept, graphical elements. This is all about a poem's visual presentation. We're talking line breaks, stanza arrangements, the spacing, the whole shebang. You can think of stanzas as your building blocks, kind of like paragraphs in a normal story. And what about that empty white space? Well, it's definitely not a mistake. That white space is a deliberate visual cue. It acts like a speed bump, literally slowing you down so you linger on specific thoughts.
To put it simply, a poetry layout is exactly like stage directions in a play. Just imagine an actor walking out on stage and completely ignoring the director's notes to whisper, and instead they just start shouting at the top of their lungs. The entire performance would fall flat, right? Well, when you ignore the graphical elements of a poem, you're essentially being that actor. You end up missing the full experience the creator built for you.
Moving on to Section 2, enjambment, the dramatic pause, and how poets control the pace.
All right, so this brings us to a fancy but honestly wonderful literary term, enjambment. This is when a thought just keeps running right past the line break into the next line without a full stop. Now, normal prose reads pretty quickly, right? So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow. Boom, done. But look at how William Carlos Williams wrote it. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow. And this brilliantly illustrates how breaking the lines forces you to pause. The grammar hasn't ended, but the line has. Splitting wheel and barrow acts like a magnifying glass. It isolates these totally ordinary words and makes them feel incredibly important, almost sacred, really.
So, when you're acting as a poetry detective in your own reading, here is exactly how you can annotate enjambment. Step 1. Circle those broken words or phrases, like wheel and barrow. Step 2. Draw an arrow right across the break to remind your brain that the thought is continuing. And Step 3. Underline the main thesis of the stanza. In this case, so much depends. Notice how those forced pauses completely change the emphasis?
All right, Section 3, concrete poetry, visual shapes, and seeing the meaning.
So, a concrete poem, sometimes called a shape poem, is one where the visual design is literally part of the meaning. Imagine a poem written entirely in the shape of an apple. Now, that shape isn't just some cute decoration. It is a deliberate, structural choice designed to direct your eye, control your breath, and tell you exactly what to emphasize.
Let's break down how that apple shape adds some really deep layers of meaning. First up, it's a content match. You are visually seeing the idea of the fruit as you read about it. Second, it actually changes your breath and your pacing. Narrow lines near the top of the apple stem force fewer words, tightening your breathing, while the wider middle lines feel full, lush, and abundant. Third, there's hierarchy. Court truths might literally be hidden in the core of the poem, while surface-level words sit on the skin. And finally, symbol layers. An apple can symbolize learning, health, or even biblical temptation. The shape just invites you to unpack all of that.
Here is your 3-step action plan for tackling any concrete poem you come across. First, literally sketch the outline on your page. Mark the stem, the skin, the core. Second, pay attention to the mood shifts. Ask yourself, does the feeling change as the lines get wider or narrower? And third, put a box around the words that echo the shape's idea. So, in our apple poem, you'd box words like sweet, bite, or crisp.
Section 4. Spotlighting a single word, the power of isolation.
I want you to imagine the incredible power of placing just one single word on its own line.
What's really interesting here is how typography projects totally different volumes and emotions. A lowercase yes is soft, it's a private assent. And all caps yes with a period, firm and final. Add a dash like yes, and suddenly it leaps forward with all this energy. Add a question mark, yes, and it turns into hopeful uncertainty. The white space around the word is the silence that makes it boom in your mind like a drum hit.
Whenever you encounter this in free verse poetry, you can use this simple 3-step method to decode it. Step 1. Circle the isolated word and immediately label the emotion. Is it defiance? Is it joy? Step 2. Draw a box around the white space to remind yourself that this is a deliberate pause, a literal spotlight. Step 3. Jot down the shift in attitude. Think about what the mood was before this word and how this single, isolated word just changed all the stakes. Moving to section 5. Practice your visual skills, the director's chair.
Okay, it's time to pause the passive listening and actually sit in the director's chair. Here is your first try it challenge. I want you to find a basic 4-line stanza and just play around with the enjambment. Swap the line breaks around. Try breaking a line right in the middle of a noun and a verb. You will notice firsthand how moving just one single word to the next line completely alters the mood, the pacing, and the emphasis of the entire piece. It's pretty wild.
Next up, try drafting your own. See if you can write a short, 5-line shape poem about a fruit, or test out that single-word spotlight. Write a few lines of free verse and stick one key word completely on its own line. Then read it out loud. Does it land like a desperate plea, a loud shout, a firm decision? Play around with the capitalization and just see what happens.
And just to make absolutely sure we've locked in the what, why, and how of graphical elements, let's quickly review these 5 homework questions. 1. Define a line break. 2. Explain what a stanza is. 3. Describe how whitespace acts as a speed bump for pacing. 4. Provide a concrete example of a shape poem. And 5. Explain how a single isolated word shifts the reader's focus. Take your time with these guys because they are the absolute keys to unlocking the visual voice.
And our final section, Section 6, Education, Morality, and Peace, the Smart Choices.
So, we've talked a lot about making smart choices when analyzing poetry. Now, the Smart Academy Godly Learners series actually connects this idea to our life choices. Their core philosophy is straightforward. Education without morality will hurt. The curriculum asks us to really think about this. What is the point of being highly educated if you continue making immoral choices that hurt yourself and the people around you? In this view, true wisdom isn't just about reading well, it's about living well.
The series builds heavily on this foundational scripture from Romans 8:6-7, which says, "For to be carnally minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace." The curriculum presents this as a promise. It teaches that true, lasting peace of mind is promised to those who keep their minds spiritual, basically aligning what you learn with how you actually live your life.
So you now have the tools to read like a director, right? You can find deep, deliberate meaning in a poem's visual choices. But the series leaves us with one final challenging question. Now that you have these tools, how will you apply that same intentionality, that same spiritual mindedness to the choices you make every single day? Keep looking for that deeper meaning in everything, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.